So it's a lovely day here in Zone 4B in Western Maine, and we have full sun for now. So what we're doing is we're setting up our sun oven, which is actually, that's a brand of oven which we've been having pretty good luck with. We got it through our local Buy Nothing group. It is not the only option for solar ovens, but it is a pretty good one from what we've seen. There's others that are more based on a cylindrical design, which look pretty intriguing. I've never tried one of those. And there are also a number of options for making your own solar ovens as well. There's the minimum box cooker, for example, is a free design you can get online, and there's tons of other ones as well. I can't speak very much to how much energy you're saving because it's difficult to get information on how much energy an oven is using. One of the reasons is because most ovens operate on 240 volts. So devices like the kilowatt, which can tell you about your energy usage, are only going to work on 120 volt devices. So you really can't just hook one of these things, up to your oven. You can look at the energy usage on a bread maker using a kilowatt, which I have not tried yet, because most bread makers are 120 volts. However, regardless of whether or not the solar oven is a large energy saver, and in a state like Maine where we have mostly renewable energy powering our grid, arguably using our oven isn't the worst thing you could do, but it's a great resilience skill because it works when you have a power outage, for example. Another benefit of it, frankly, is that it makes really good bread. Some of the best loaves we have made have been in this thing, actually. And we make good loaves in our oven, but I have to say, we've had some really good luck with this thing. So I've got this part whole wheat loaf that I am getting ready to put in here. I like to make sure that the solar oven has reached at least 225 degrees before I put anything in here. And you might think that's a really low number because most bread recipes are more in the 350s, but we've had some really amazing results coming from bread baked around 225 to 250. So I'm opening this up. I'm not going to put my plate in there. I'm just going to put parchment paper. I think I'm actually going to fold that under because it's good to think about the absorption of light. So I don't want more white in there reflecting light out than I need to. If you do get a sun oven, make sure you use this little rubber thing to open the glass because it does get very hot. And this little thing here also gets pretty hot, but personally I don't have a big problem touching it briefly just to lock it up. It would be nice if they could put a piece of rubber on there. Maybe they did and it fell off, actually. I can't really tell looking at that. Anyway, once you have it in, you just have to make sure that you are aligned with the sun. These reflectors on the side here give you a lot more leeway. Most of the light right now that's coming in is coming straight in and then being absorbed by the black. As the sun starts to travel away, as it starts to move away from the alignment you set it to, that's where these reflectors come in. So as it moves over here, you start to get some light getting bounced inside that way. So you don't have to check the alignment every 5-10 minutes or something like that, thanks to these reflectors here. And they also work as well as the sun gets lower and higher in the sky. But the way I do check it, it's certainly possible to just work using the shadow behind it to align it, but what I have here is basically just a nail. I used the drill press to drill a hole so this would go straight through, and then I just have a nail in this board. And when I line that up here, come in on that, would you? As you can see, that now there are several shadows because these reflectors are also giving me incident light, but if I go down, you can see that shadow there is getting longer. What I want to do is I want this shadow to be as short as possible, and as I move left or right, you can see that shadow moving too. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get that shadow straight and short. And there we go. Now you also have these two smaller shadows you may be able to see here and here. Those are from the reflectors. It's that really deep shadow you want to know about. Some of the newer models of the sun oven actually have a pretty nifty device that they come with, but this one does not. And that's okay, because this is working just fine for us. We are now at about 240 degrees, I would guess. And that's going to be totally fine. If you do get a solar oven, I strongly advise you to get a little oven thermometer like this thing came with, just to make sure that you are, not cooking at such a low temperature that the yeast is going to just stay alive and keep expanding, and all you get at the end is a rubbery sponge. That's basically it for what we do with solar ovens. This is going to be a pretty good loaf of bread. You don't have to worry too much about overdoing it because this is sealed. So there's actually a limit to how much moisture can escape. And having a moist oven, any baker can tell you, does result in a nice crispy crust, which is what we usually get out of this thing. So don't worry about overcooking it. It's really, really hard to burn something in a solar oven. Even if you leave it 2 hours after it's done, it's mostly just going to get a slightly crispier crust. So we are just about done with this bread. As you can see, we're maybe 270 degrees on that timer, and it's starting to get nice and brown with a good strong crust. See how that steam coming out there because it was all sealed. So got a good hollow sound on that. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to let that cool down for a moment so that I can pick it up without burning myself. And we can probably pretty quickly cool down with that glass open. It's still going to be quite warm, but at least we can probably get this so that I can take it out, and I'll show you what it looks like in the kitchen in a little while. But up next is going to be some corn on the cob. So we have the solar oven now loaded with 5 ears of corn on the cob with the husks on, and we're going to cook them like that. Normally you might cook them like that for the purposes of retaining moisture. I don't think that's a huge issue because this is a sealed oven. However, I am just going to do that because I didn't feel like taking the husks off yet. This is not corn that we've grown. That corn is still growing right now, and we're actually not growing sweet corn this year. We have Painted Mountain flour corn, and we have Dakota black popping corn, but we're not actually growing any corn for fresh eating this year. Anyway, I'm going to leave this in for several hours, and this should make a good dinner. Okay, we have had this in here for quite a few hours now. It was mostly between 250 and 270 in some cases. Sun's starting to go down now, so it's actually at about 200, or it was before I opened it. Okay, let's take a look. feels like it's cooked pretty well. These should be pretty good. So we have our bread here is being turned into grilled cheese with some Cabot Seriously Sharp cheddar from Vermont. And if you haven't gone away from gas cooktops yet, you might want to do a little bit of reading about PM 2.5 air pollution, which we were told for years that gas was the cleanest possible thing on Earth, or so they used to tell us in the 80s and 90s. But unfortunately, it actually puts out a lot of PM 2.5 particulate pollution, which is horrible for your cardiopulmonary system. So we're cooking on electric, and one of the things about these newer glass cooktops people don't like is you can't use cast iron. So something to consider there is a heavy gauge carbon steel pan. There's a lot of them from France, but there's other companies that are starting to do Chinese imports as well that are also probably pretty good. And as you can see, it's pretty thick compared to a typical, say, non-stick pan, which is usually made out of very thin steel or aluminum. And because of that, it's got a lot of thermal mass, great browning, very similar performance to a cast iron pan. So in addition to the corn on the cob and the grilled cheese, we're also going to be having root beer, which we have made with wintergreen leaves that grow on our property. So many people don't realize this, but root beer today is not actually made with roots. It is made with oil of wintergreen. And the way we do it is we will put a good bundle of leaves, and you don't want to pick your wintergreen heavily. We really only take about 1 out of every 3 leaves per plant per season at most, and we sometimes don't even do that much. Now, you just put it in some water in a jar, and then we put either some paper or a cloth, something that can breathe, and leave it for a number of days until it has a very, very strong wintergreen smell. And then we end up with this, which is that same extract that we have put in a 2-to-1. No, I'm sorry. This is that same extract that we have done in a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar and the liquid that the wintergreen was soaked in. And that makes a great syrup. So if I'm going to mix this with 1 can of seltzer, I will do between 1 and 3 tablespoons of the syrup, depending upon how sweet we want it. So here I've done 2 tablespoons, and even 3 tablespoons is not as sweet as a root beer you would buy at the store. But 2 is a little bit less sweet even than what we usually do. And then just a quick stir with the spoon, and it is delicious. And there's our dinner. Solar bread and solar corn